How the idea for this panel came about. We were at the SBJ conference in New Orleans this past fall, because as a general assignment reporter, I personally am in this situation too often. Yesterday and the day before that, sadly all the time. I never got to this business to cover trauma, but as a journalist in a city like Chicago, violence often is the story we find ourselves covering, and it looks to continue that way as gunshots ring out throughout the landscape already in March at levels we normally do not see until the summer months. So together with the sponsorship of the Chicago Headline Club, we are here. And I would like to thank Headline Club President Steve Franklin and the board, especially Beth Conrad here at Loyola, for getting us this space and making this happen tonight. Many of us knock on too many doors of too many loved ones of those taken from them by traumatic acts, gun violence, car crashes, 2 wars. We're sorry, we say to them. The second thing I want to tell them personally is I don't like being there, and I know most of the time they don't want me there either. It is awkward, uncomfortable, and as people, not as reporters, the last thing we want to do is to cause them further pain, or, equally important, not to take advantage of their vulnerability. It is a delicate transaction, and there are right and wrong ways to do it. Tonight's panel promises to help us better understand this interview process so the stories of trauma victims are honored, as is our professionalism as journalists. A second issue journalists, myself included, often struggle with is making sense of it all. Sometimes we seek to find a happy ending when in fact that ending is no adequate consolation at all. Stories that I've done that come to mind often include a conclusion like the victim was an organ donor, so his tragedy will help others in need. Or a fractured family is reunited through their common grief. Oftentimes there is no adequate conclusion to stories of trauma, and these stories can leave our readers, viewers, and ourselves wondering what was the purpose of it all and what was the purpose in our telling it. Tonight's panel will address strategies for this storytelling. And finally, one of the purposes of equal importance is how do we deal personally as witnesses to tragedy day in and day out. As a student, as many of you all are, I remember being shell-shocked in covering my first stories of violence. But then, in an attempt to be professional, I learned to turn it off. Any feeling at the end of the day, another tragedy, another day's work, and I thought I was doing the right thing, the necessary thing to advance in my career. But as I got older, went through my own personal hardships, I realized this was not as easy as it once was, and I began to see those victims I interviewed as not that far apart from my own self. We're human, and so is pain, and we see so much of it, and to say it doesn't affect us, for most of us, would be false. Those with us tonight have experienced this in their personal lives and will share professional lives as well, and will share their best coping strategies, and we thank them for being here. I would like to introduce Dr. Frank Ockberg, who's traveled to see us from Michigan. He is a psychiatrist and one of the founding fathers of modern psychotraumatology, who has helped define and research post-traumatic stress, especially victimization symptoms, and Stockholm Syndrome. He now devotes most of his time to educating journalists about trauma, and the Dark Center's Ockberg Fellowship is named for him. He is the chairman emeritus of the Dark Center for Journalism and Trauma. He is a graduate of Harvard University and Johns Hopkins University Medical School. Maybe some of you heard him this afternoon on the afternoon shift with Steve, who was talking about post-traumatic stress. And notice Dr. Ockberg left off disorder. Post-traumatic stress. Julia Lieblich is an assistant professor here at Loyola University School of Communication. She earned her master's in theological studies from Harvard Divinity School, served as a religion writer for the AP, and then Chicago Tribune. Her work has also appeared in the Washington Post, the LA Times, the Boston Globe, Time, Life, Ms., and the New York Times Magazine. She was an Ockberg Fellow with the Dark Center for Journalism and Trauma, and her new book, available here after the program, has just been published, Wounded, I Am Norway, Finding Meaning After Terror, tells the story of a Bosnian concentration camp survivor now helping other survivors to find meaning in their experience. And Jeff Kelly Lowenstein serves as the database and investigative editor for OI, the Chicago Tribune's Spanish language newspaper. Prior to OI, he was a staff reporter at the Chicago Reporter, an investigative magazine centering on race and poverty issues. He's a graduate of Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism. He was an Ockberg Fellow in 2008 and is the current president of the Dark Society, which has a mission to connect and support support journalists worldwide who advance the compassionate and ethical coverage of trauma, conflict, and social injustice. The Dark Society is looking to develop members here in Chicago, and has forms you can fill out and leave here tonight